Hello once again. When it comes to the PCMs and the computers and the modules, sometimes it's very difficult to find the correct terminals. Now, they all have connectors. Those connectors go into terminals on the PCM itself or the BCM, the body control module. So think of it as you're putting connectors into these terminals. The problem is, how do you find the right terminals on the PCMs? Because you don't want to diagnose and say that the PCM is the problem when the connection could be, or the connector, or something external to it. First, we have to identify how to find the proper terminals. So the problem is, these are abbreviated. So each manufacturer or model will use their identifications, their abbreviations for the pins. Now, needless to say, it's pretty hard to figure out what it stands for. Even myself, after so many years, it's pretty hard to understand what it stands for. VF, TE, unless you're really working it every single day. So that's one way of finding out. The other way is obviously the color codes of the wires. Third way is the pin numbers. Now, if you don't pay attention to the connectors, some usually they have the pin numbers on the extensions, on the connectors themselves. Hopefully, when the weather will get better, which it is soon, I'll show you exactly what I mean on the car itself. So those pin numbers are located, and they show you the pin number, so it's much easier. But let's go with this case. Let's say we're trying to find out THW and E2, what it stands for, where it goes. Our option is to buy the manual and try to figure out what it stands for. The other option is, let's go try to find where it's connected to in the schematic itself. Now, this is not an actual schematic, this is a pictorial. So we went over THW and E2. Now, it stands for engine coolant temperature sensor. Stands for engine coolant temperature sensor. As you notice over here, like we said, it goes to the computer. Any sensor goes to a computer giving you information. Now, the ground, you're not going to find the ground over here connected to this one or this one. The ground is E1. When we measure across here and here, positive and negative across here with the meter. Now, as you can see, this is a thermistor. For those of you who are not familiar, the computer will give it 5 volts. Okay? Any sensor, you see these are 2 wires only, not 3 wires. Temperature, intake air temperature, which senses the temperature of the heat coming into the air chamber. That will always be a thermistor. So there's a graph over here. Obviously on the cold, when it's cold, the voltage that we just said will give it 5 volts. Now, even if you don't know anything about sensors, you don't know anything about computers, if the computer gives us 5 volts, I can only go up to 5 volts or less. I can never go above it because this is what it gives it. Okay, if I give you $5, you can only spend $5 or less. You cannot spend more than $5. So this cannot go 5.1 volts, 5.2 volts. It can only go down. That's a very critical point to understand. So let's say at coldest temperature, minus 20 Fahrenheit, you're at 4.7 volts. Not even 5 volts. As you heat up, as the engine heats up, remember it's a coolant temperature, as the coolant heats up, all the way up to 250 Fahrenheit, you're at 1.45. So remember, you're looking for it to drop. How much will it drop? The hotter it gets, the more it'll drop. We started from 4.70. We're going down to 1.45. That's the critical part that you have to remember. If you measure the intake air temperatures, and I ask you, how much you think at cold temperature it'll measure? If the computer gives 5 volts, if you say 6 volts, you're wrong. It can only measure less. So if we start off with intake air temperature, also the same graph would apply, 4.7 or something like that, all the way down to 1.45. So if you're in this range and it's going down when you put the meter, you know pretty much that the sensor is doing its job. Therefore, when it comes to things like this and the computer board, you're not sure what they stand for, always look for the symbol on the schematic and go between, measure between here and here, not with ground. And since I brought up ground, we're going to go to a different video so I can explain to you about ground measurements. So please go to my channel, Joe Electronic Schematics for Auto, and my other one, Automotive Electronic Schematics by Joseph. And thank you for watching.